Jacqueline and myself will say a few words before we finish. One thing that struck me about the last discussion, and I think it is really what it goes to the heart of commemoration and the society we want to live in, it is about imagining what the future looks like. And, you know, we delve into heritage, we delve into history, and we mine it for contemporary purpose. And I think we mine it pretty badly. We mined it pretty badly for a long time here, and we're continuing to do that. So there is something, I think, a challenge about imagining the future that we do want for us all. Is it a pluralist future, or is it still a continued divided society? And it's that degree of responsibility, I suppose, that we have when we engage in this work. And we need to engage in this work thoughtfully and carefully. And that's very much why whenever HLF and CRC started to engage in this territory, we recognized we needed to develop the principles which you will be familiar with. And that's why it was also good to get, particularly from when Chris was talking, kind of the endorsement there of the principles are a good thing, but there are other sort of aspects of that thought which may help us further as we go along. In the morning, I found it very interesting when we had our historians talking, and the role of historians, I suppose, is to provide us with the material. As such, that becomes both heritage and memory. And some of that material is quite challenging, the idea of the King's Speech, a speech which, if it had been listened to, might have helped create a very different Northern Ireland. But also that wider sense of the need for that broader context within which we find ourselves, and the other dimensions. We tend to see our history in the past in Northern Ireland very much on our own terms, but it was part of a much bigger and wider story. And I think this morning our historians helped us to look at that. I find it interesting, the idea of maybe we need a more nuanced understanding of the Black and Tans. These were traumatized people. These were traumatized people who had come from the First World War in the trenches. That's a challenge to take on board. But historians mining this territory give us the material through which we can build that complexity that leads us to some other sort of challenging questions. To me, one thing I don't get is the idea of a shared history. I think that is quite a sort of a dangerous thing, sort of road to go down, because within sort of the past, the complexity of the past, there are so many different narratives. So whenever our museum colleagues talked about objects and the different ways that you can look at objects, similarly with the past, there are many different ways to look at it. I think it's recognizing that there are sort of these combined or entwined narratives that are there. They kind of touch and they sort of nuance each other, but they don't have to be 100% sort of bought in to by absolutely everyone. We are allowed our interpretation. That gives us the space to be human and to be ourselves. So other sort of thoughts, very impressed clearly with the work that has been done, certainly with the likes of the Causeway Group and the museum in Lisburn. The shocking idea, our school doesn't do Irish history. Yet, on the other hand, the uplifting engagement of the life-changing, life-affirming and life-saving aspects of engaging with the past. Things like that touch into sort of well-being, and where a lot of us are having to work and deal with the programme for government at the moment, and well-being is one of the higher aspirations of that. There's material here, if used thoughtfully, that can really help us navigate the space So I suppose that's my concluding thought about it all is very much that idea of thoughtful remembering, and what Maureen was talking about. You know, we have a responsibility. Our politicians have a responsibility when they think about moving into the foundation of Northern Ireland in 2021 and how they engage with that. Are they going to engage with that in a partisan way? Or is this an opportunity actually to come up with a more pluralist understanding of that time and that past? Well, I don't particularly have the answer to that one, but I think it's a question that's worth thinking about. Thank you.
I'm standing between you and the road home, and for some reason it doesn't feel like safe ground, so I'm going to keep this very short. I just want to start by thanking all of you for coming along today, and all of the speakers in particular as well, and the agencies. There was a little subgroup that put together the programme for today, so can I thank everyone who was involved in that process, and then on behalf of the Community Relations Council and indeed Heritage Lottery, particularly Stella and our own Deirdre, for holding the spokes of those wheels together as we made it up to today and indeed beyond that. Paul spoke briefly there about the historical and heritage aspects of today and indeed this whole project. I must say on a personal note that the element of it that I have really enjoyed all along these years has been the retrieval of small nuggets of almost lost history. It feels great whenever, and I've been in lots of rooms now where people have gone, either I didn't know that, or someone has imparted a piece of information, even in front of historians who know more than most of us about these matters, and it has been a new little bit of information that has made it into the public realm, and I have really enjoyed that. And I've enjoyed the whole messiness of it. I've enjoyed the fact that it has been and is contradictory, it is challenging certainly, but I completely agree with you. The weave that comes out of that doesn't necessarily need to end up looking like one final sign up on the dotted line narrative, not at all. Nothing in life ever really is. But insofar as we start to bring all of the threads together and value all of the threads for the contribution they made in the times that we're in it, that I think is worth doing. It's worth being involved in, and I'm glad to have been part of that. From the community relations point of view, this work started, I have to say, I'm going to be really honest, as a necessity. We really needed to be able to answer the question, what can we offer in a decade of commemorations that otherwise may play into one of the deep dividing features of our society? So it started really from a concern, a very serious concern at that stage. And the principles themselves, it's true to say as well, some of you who were around at the time will know, emerged after much discussion as a buttress for funders against the question of, or the likelihood of being asked to fund on the one hand and then on the other hand, so one for each if you like, and we really needed to find a way to approach that dilemma, but also to enable a more detailed and nuanced understanding that might allow to emerge a more contradictory, certainly much more multidimensional view of history that has probably been buried because it included inconvenient truths and because it didn't particularly help the narrative of nation building that really informed that decade to a large extent. So we found obviously the principles to be very helpful and enduring for us, having just re-examined them again. And it is always a great delight to hear when others have also found them useful for their own purposes. So they are not prescriptive, but I do think they are a helpful frame, and it has been pleasing earlier in the year when we reviewed them to hear that you and others who are not here today felt the same way about them. So I hope they will continue to be helpful to guide us as we move forward. At this point of reflection and preparation for the years to come, we can take a lot of assurance from events like today I do, certainly. There are people with the skills, commitment, enthusiasm, and as time has gone by, increasing levels of confidence in approaching this work. There isn't quite the same level of fear that there was, or concern or trepidation that there would have been in the room, certainly in that conference in 2011. We have come a long way with the help of people like yourself, Eamon, and others who are not here today. We have come a very long way, and that sense of solidarity and that sense of an iterative working through, walking together journey has been so full of new learning and new relationships and connections. You're all here as proof of that, and I hope we will continue that walk together as we go forward. It has been a great pleasure to be involved in that work. The engagement between such a wide variety of people, historians, community relations practitioners, people who are involved in museums work, people who are involved in the arts, local history, everything. So many people, all enthusiastic about their own disciplines and all bringing something to each other's discipline, has been an absolute joy. Personally, I've enjoyed seeing the way in which curiosity, as someone said earlier on, curiosity, knowledge, understanding, emotion, empathy, and action have all interacted with each other to help to move us forward into the future. And not for the first time, I feel, in these sorts of situations, in these sorts of discussions, we're talking about history, and in some small way we're making it as well. And I look forward to continuing that work with you in the future. Thank you for being here.